Oh, yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Snow The Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast, the People's Podcast, the Players Podcast, Prognosticators Podcast, Pedialyte Podcast. Are the Flyers feeling a little bit spicy leading up to draft day podcast. The Anthony SanFilippo initiated us having an episode today podcast. The Anthony SanFilippo said on X that he was excited to spend time together tonight podcast. The Anthony SanFilippo is actively costing Russ time with his wife podcast. I'm Russ Joy, that's it. Bundy is on assignment. He's actually, I think he has a prior engagement tonight. I don't know if it was another thing that he's getting honored for. The man has been getting his honors.
Everywhere we go. Every time we turn around, he's getting a new honor.
And he's well deserving of it. But anyway, big thank you to everybody who's joining us live over on YouTube, Facebook, and X. If you're on YouTube right now, you'll notice that, there are two things. One, in order for you to be able to comment tonight, you'll just have to subscribe to the channel. That really takes nothing. There's no fee. It's not the member tier thing. We might eventually do something there, but as of right now, we're not. Just subscribe to the channel. You can ring the bell, get notified every time we go live. You'll also notice if you're on YouTube that we have a poll up right now that we're going to let up there for a while. And it's about what the Flyers are going to do on draft day. Are they going to move up? Are they going to move down? Will they trade picks for a player? Could they stand pat? We're going to get to all that. And we've got people already excited. Allison commented on the shirt. My wife got me this shirt, and I got to tell you, Ant, it's very soft. I was on a call this morning with work. Nice guy on our tech team, Scottish guy. He's like, Russ, I got to tell you, no matter what happens, no matter who gets on the call today, you've got the best shirt of the day. So if the Scottish guy approves it and my wife approves it, it's pretty much, that's great.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I love that Allison was the first person to take note of it because we were on a call together earlier today and I noticed it and I was like, what's up with the shirt? I like your party shirt, my friend. You know,
well, it might be a party for Flyers fans pretty soon, depending on your thoughts and how much you believe in what's going on out there in the Twitterverse, especially. A lot of rumors have been swirling. We always preach caution here on Snow the Goalie about be careful where you're getting your information from and all that. But and I think that when there are enough people kind of pointing a certain direction, and you wrote about this today on Crossing Broad, there is certainly interest among the Flyers to do something. I think that right now it's more likely than not they do something as opposed to standing pat and doing nothing. Where are you at right now? Give people an idea.
Well, they're going to try. I think that they're going to certainly try to move up. I think that's their intent. I think there are a couple of players that they really like that will probably not make it to 12. Mm-hmm. So they're going to try and figure out a way to get a little bit higher in the draft. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. Teams sometimes have crazy asks to move down, even if it's only a few spots. But I think that they're certainly going to try to do it. If it doesn't work, and here's the thing, and I think Danny has really gotten smart in only 1 year as a GM on how to say next to nothing with a lot of words. So it was pretty good. But I think what he said today in his press conference that was accurate was, if the right situation comes up, we'll move up. And if not, and we think the right situation is to move down and collect more assets, we will. And I know that really sounds like, he's saying nothing, right? He's saying, we can move up. Yeah, we can move down. But I think that he's not wrong because what he's looking at is two different possibilities. If they can move up to get one of the players that they like, they will try to do so. If they can't and they stay at 12 and those players don't fall and they don't believe they will fall, right? That's why they want to move up because they don't think they'll make it to 12. Then they could move it back down and accrue more assets along the way. So I think that's kind of the thing. It's not that it's we can move up or we can move down. It's we prefer to move up, but if we can't and the players we don't like, then maybe we'll swing back down and collect assets and take it from there.
Danny Briere met with the media. So today's Thursday, for those who listen after the fact in the podcast feed. So he met with the media on Thursday. I wouldn't say that anything was there weren't any massive nuggets of info there. It was a lot of GM talk. Good on him. There was a good question I think Charlie O'Connor asked about Russian players and about whether or not what they've been through with Mishkov and what they've been through with Fedotov might make the Flyers more willing to potentially gamble or to go down that route where some other teams might be iffy on going after Russian players. Now, there are a few Russian guys that are out there. I think the most highly rated of them is Ivan Demidov, a guy who, like, I jokingly said on this show a month and a half ago, hey, do whatever you can. Maybe it was only a couple of weeks ago. Hey, sell everything. Sell it all. Try to move up in the draft. Go get him. He can play left wing. Mishkov can play right wing. You don't have a center. If you find one somewhere along the lines, you've got a top line. I have to say, Ant, while it's very unlikely because he's probably going to go top 2, top 4, if there's a way to make a move to get up there, I am all about the Flyers going in on the young stud Russians more so than what the prior regime did, which was go find the milquetoast white dudes from Minnesota who probably were going to amount to nothing. I'm all in on going after the Russians.
And that's
all
fine.
100%.
Here's the thing, though, Russ. And I'm not saying it would be a bad decision. I mean, you would have to, first of all, you have to move up twice, right? Which I wrote about today. And I do think they're going to keep an eye on it. It wouldn't, first of all, it wouldn't surprise me if Demidov goes to Chicago. But if for some reason they don't take him, I don't think Anaheim's going to take him at 3 because Anaheim's got so many forwards, right? They need young defensemen if they're going to try and line up their prospects coming together at the same time at positions. So they would probably take the best defenseman or second best defenseman. If Demidov makes it to 4, the question is, can the Flyers flip to 7 with Ottawa, which is what everybody's kind of talking about, right? In the last 24 hours, can they flip to 7 and then use 7 and maybe the Florida pick at the back end of the first round, or even more beyond that, to jump up to 4 with Columbus and be able to get Demidov there? If you can, that's great. That's all well and good. And I don't think that, it would be a bad thing for the Flyers to have Demidov on one side and Mishkov on the other. But there are players in this draft who are potential number 1 defensemen. And we talked a year ago to Keith Jones, or a little bit less than a year ago at this point, where he talked about how important it is to find that guy. Like, that is the most important player to find. They don't grow on trees. You either have to draft them or get really lucky to be able to have one become available in free agency or via trade. And so if you have the ability to get up that high, in my mind, while Demidov would be nice, if you think that there is a number 1 defenseman out there, you have to go get it. And so, like, I don't think it's a bad pick if you trade up and go get that player, the Demidov player. You go get him. That's great. That's fine. Not a bad pick, but to me, the best pick is a number 1 defenseman, especially in this draft where there's a handful that'll probably go in the top 10 who can be number 1 guys.
If we go back in the archives with this show, I think it was about a year ago. I think it was right before the draft, before they went out and got Mishkov. We talked about just the projection of what this year's draft was going to look like. And what most of the scouts and pundits had said was it's going to be a good defenseman draft.
Yeah.
So last year was like load up on the high ceiling, dynamic wing, and be ready for this year to go out and get that number 1 defenseman. Now, while I think you're right in that, hey, it would be a really great thing for most teams to go out and get the number 1 defenseman, I have to remind you that this team already has a lot of number 1 defensemen. They've got Ryan Ellis. They have Rasmus Ristolainen. They have Travis Sanheim. They have Jamie Drysdale. At what point are you just being greedy, Ant?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're being greedy. I see everybody's kind of mentioning as a name in the chat. I mean, you can pull up any number of 4, 5, 6 different people who've now mentioned Sam Dickinson as the defenseman. And, when I look at that, it's like there's a lot of reasons to think that Dickinson makes sense. The Flyers really do have like a nice much like the Eagles like to draft SEC players and Georgia players, right? You know, all that.
Yeah.
The Flyers do have a thing where they do like the London Knights players. There's a real connection there. Keith Jones is very close with the Hunters, Mark Hunter and Dale Hunter. Dale Hunter's the coach. And Dickinson is playing for them. Oliver Bonk is one of their players that's playing there, right? And Barkey's playing there. So these guys they get to see a lot of London. And so therefore it wouldn't surprise me. Plus with that relationship, if you know a kid's got to play another year in junior, maybe 2 years in junior, you know that when you have a guy that you're close with and know they'll take care of your player, you know, hey, we'd love for him to be able to do this, X, Y, Z. They'll work with you. There's a lot of value to that, right? So it would not surprise me if that's the kind of guy. What would surprise me is if both Demidov and Dickinson are in this spot where the Flyers are eligible to pick or can make a pick.
Yeah.
And if they choose the forward over the defenseman, that's where I can't wrap my head around that choice. I think that the defenseman is far more important. And I think that would be so really, I mean, we're talking about a bunch of hypotheticals here. We really are. I mean,
my favorite time of the year.
We're talking about 2 potential trades, not just one, but 2, and one has to happen for the other to happen. Yeah. And on top of that, players have to fall a certain way in the draft. So we're talking about a lot of things going a certain way in order for the Flyers to be able to do these kinds of things. And so I think the odds of that happening are lower. I wouldn't say they're impossible, but they're certainly lower. And yeah, I mean, but I still think, and Danny didn't mention defensemen in the press conference today, which kind of surprised me a little bit. He talked about the need for centers because they don't have centers in the system.
Yeah.
But man, how do you pass up the defensemen? If you're moving up from 12, how do you pass up any of these defensemen who are considered top 10 guys? I don't understand it. I don't know.
I mean, I think
you have to go.
I think it's only if Demidov is there. Like if you're able to get in the top 4, if he falls to 4, that's the play.
But why? Why is that the play ahead of a number 1 potential number 1 defenseman?
Because, in fairness, like the way that I view it, you need more dynamic talent than anything. You're going to need affordable dynamic talent up front. I think that is critical for this team, not only in the short term but for long-term success. And defensemen still make me nervous because, as we've seen over the years, you have a guy, you draft a guy that you believe is potentially going to become a top pair guy. He ends up not developing the way that you want him to. There's nobody in this draft as a defenseman who is a stone-cold lead pipe lock number 1 D-man. There's no one right now that's being projected to be a true defensive anchor. And I mean, like,
sure there are.
Not generational talent. I don't think there are.
No, there's no generational talents. I mean, but I don't look at defensemen really as the generational talent types. I mean, really, think about it over the last 10, 15 years. I mean, other than Victor Hedman, is he a generational talent defenseman? I know everybody's going to say Makar, right? But he's a generational talent as of an offensive defenseman. There are still some holes in his game even today, as great as he is on the defensive side. But really, and even in that draft, there were multiple number 1 defensemen available. I mean, Heiskanen. Would you take Heiskanen as a number 1 defenseman right now? I would.
Probably.
Yeah.
Most of
I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Too, but,
yeah. But that's my point. Like, I think that, there are guys, and that in this draft who kind of fit that same mold as a Heiskanen. Not maybe not a Makar offensively, maybe not a Hedman overall, but I think that there are Heiskanen types in this draft. And to me, that's a huge piece. That's a huge piece. More so than a winger. If Demidov was a center, Russ, I think I have a different conversation with you right now. If he's a top line center, then I could say, okay, you need centers too. They're the most important offensive position. In lieu of that, to me, the number 1 D takes precedent. But that's just a preference thing. That's I'm not saying you're wrong, nor do I think that it's a bad pick if you get up that high to take Demidov. I'm not saying it's bad, but in my mind, if you have a chance at number one defenseman, you take him.
I mean, just for the record, like I'm just saying I like dynamic players, and Ant says he wants the D. That's where we're at. That's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But by the way, Maria doing dishes.
Maria,
running,
I hear she's running water.
I can see. I could see it on your face. I could tell that you could tell what was going on. She's over there doing dishes. She's running the garbage disposal. That's her way of saying hi to you, Russ.
And she also, we were going to do the show at 7:00, and then you texted me and said that Maria requested we do it at 8.
Do you want to know why?
I don't. No.
Okay. Well, right,
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I won't tell you.
Why did we have to have everybody, push their whole nights back an hour?
We needed it because she was making a fine dinner, as she usually does.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we had stuffed shells tonight that she made. We're not store-bought. She made them, so stuffed shells. But her son, Mark, he gets home from work late on Thursdays. So dinner was a little bit later than it usually is. Okay. So she was saying, can't Russ wait till 8:00 instead of 7:00? And I said, I'll ask him. I will tell him it's just for you.
I'm a nice guy.
You're a nice guy. You took care of her.
I've spent so much time today talking to you and helping with things. What can I do? What can I do? Nice guy. Nice guy.
As Joe Papel points out, Maria calling the shots. My priorities are in order.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
100%. Okay. We got the draft. I think that for the most part, the draft portion of the show is essentially where we think it's going to be. Now, there are other assets. Well, because I want to go to the other stuff that could.
That's fine. And the only other thing I would say about the draft is like, yes, this is what they want to do. They want to move up. But if they don't, I still don't think they're staying at 12. So I think regardless of what happens in this draft, I don't think the Flyers will pick at 12. I think they'll try and move up from 12 to get to 7 first and potentially to 4 if everything kind of falls their way. But if those things don't work out, if those don't play that way, I don't think they just sit at 12 and take a player. I think they consider moving back and adding another pick to the arsenal. And there's the issue of the Columbus second rounder, which the Blue Jackets that they got as part of that deal with Provorov, that the Blue Jackets have to let them know up to an hour before the draft, I think it is, whether that pick is going to take place, convey this year or next year. So the Flyers have to be prepared for that, because that's another pick that can come into the equation here with things that could be moved, assets that can be moved. If you have a second round pick in 24, well, okay, that's fine. But if it becomes a 25 pick and that 25 draft is considered a better draft than the 24 draft, well, suddenly you're talking about a Columbus second round pick, which could be like at the very top of the second round in a deeper draft. Now, all of a sudden, that becomes a different asset. I think a second round pick in 25 is a better asset than a second round pick in 24, right? So it'll be interesting. Right, yeah. It'll be interesting. So it's an hour there. Thanks, Jay. It's an hour after the round ends, not before the round begins. So, yeah, that's what it is. He's 100% right. It's an hour after the draft, after the first round.
It's interesting too, because Danny made the joke during the presser today that, like, if anybody knows what they're going to do, by all means, let me know. Let me know first. Yeah. I think that you're right, though. Just the way that this draft and next draft have been looked at, 25 is supposed to be a stronger draft, top to bottom. I think the other thing that you have to keep in mind, too, is like you and I and Bundy, we've all kind of gone back and forth about what's the best thing to do with a number of the guys who are on this roster who might not factor into the long-term future of the team. Like, the team might have already kind of figured out, we're not in on these guys being part of what's to come. The Morgan Frosts of the world, the Joel Farabees of the world. And then there are guys who have value who teams have been interested in the past who you might not want to move right away, right? Like Travis Konechny is a name that we've talked about for a few episodes in a row now. Travis Sanheim has a no-movement clause, but there have been teams interested in him. Rasmus Ristolainen has been very close potentially to having been moved a couple of times. There are players on this team who do have value. And how much that value around the league lines up with what fans view them as probably aren't exactly the same. But if you're looking at it right now and you say, all right, the Flyers are most likely to move one of those guys, Sanheim, Ristolainen, or Farabee. Who do you think could be dealt either on draft day or at some point this offseason? Who's the most likely of those three?
It's not Sanheim because he's got no movement clause. Well, I think there's chances of moving both Farabee and Ristolainen. I'm going to say Farabee is more likely to be moved. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if in Ristolainen's case, you may have to retain salary, and I'm not sure if the Flyers really want to do that, considering they're already looking at retaining salary this year, potentially buying out Cam Atkinson, which I think is going to be the way that they go. Welcome back there, Russell. I think that there's, because of that, I think they might end up sticking with Ristolainen more likely, unless someone will take the full salary. If someone is willing to take the full salary, then Ristolainen's the easy answer. But I think Farabee is a player that becomes a little bit repetitive for you if you're adding wingers. And if that's the case, and also he has more value. He gets you something more in return. So I will say that it's probably Farabee that is most likely to go.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
I think that this is where I think it does get interesting, though, Ant. So, like, we talked about at the beginning of the show, hypothetically, and my entire existence now is going to be predicated on 2 moves, go up and get Demidov. This is now my life. This is now the thing that I'm going to manifest into existence. Or just moving up and getting, like, into the top 5, maybe 4, who knows. If you are able to trade to 7 to Ottawa,
yeah,
and it costs you number 12, and maybe it costs you a Frost, or it costs you another first, whether it's another first this year, 1 next year, to move up to 7. Does Farabee being added into a deal get you from 7 to 4? And if it does, do you view it as being worth it?
I don't think. I don't think you need to add Farabee into that deal
to get from 7 to 4.
I don't think you need to.
Okay,
because you're looking at a team in Columbus that brand new general manager. He's not looking to fix things quickly with that team. I think he looks at it and says, we need to develop players faster. I mean, Don Waddell's going to do it like he did it like he was doing it in Carolina. I think that you don't need to do. I think that he'll want 2 draft picks. I think he'll want he'll want to go back to 7. Obviously, he'll probably want another first. Of course, he'll probably ask for a 25 first. The Flyers would probably say no, and then maybe another pick later, and that gets you up there. And depends on how much you really want to get into that spot, how much you're willing to give up for that player. I think that the player that has a better chance of moving in this draft is Scott Laughton. I think there are multiple teams. I shouldn't say think. I know that there are multiple teams interested in Scott Laughton, and Ottawa certainly is one of them. They would love to add a Laughton type. Now, I mean, they've liked him for several years. This is not new. I just wonder if it's, if that's enough, or do they want you to take a contract back if you were to move from 12 to 7? Because you're moving, it's 5 spots, right? I mean, that's a big jump. It's a big jump, right? Especially in this draft, because, like I said, you're you're probably missing out on the good defensemen, the top defensemen, if you go from 7 to 12. So Ottawa has to get something in return, so that they would get a player that they like, but they probably also want value in their salary cap situation. And I know a lot of people have thrown in there on name Jacob Chikrin. I don't think that's happening. I really don't. I know people have mentioned, there's been mention of Bronnstrom, Eric Bronnstrom. He's an RFA. I don't think that's happening either. I think, if you remember when we talked about last year when they tried to make the Shane Pinto trade, which you tweeted about.
Yes.
They would have had in that conversation, which obviously Ottawa never, agreed to the deal because they didn't want to move. They really didn't want to lose Pinto. And his gambling suspension actually helped them in a lot of ways, because then they were able to kind of defer that situation with his contract until later in the year when they can move stuff around. I think that you're probably looking at Matthew Joseph again, who is the contract that Ottawa would like to move. Very, very fast skater, very fast. Has a lot of things that he still has to work on a little bit with his game, but he's got a lot of speed. And at $2.9 million a year for 2 years, that's not a terrible contract. He actually had a decent season last year compared to the season before when he was not good. I think that's kind of like a more likely scenario, right? If you're Ottawa, you want to make sure you get some cap certainty and get a player that can help you right away if you're going to move back 5 spots. I think that's something that's more likely.
Is there a way? Just hear me out. I hate the idea of taking money back. Despise it. Absolutely makes me nauseous in the midst of the rebuild. That, as Danny said at the press conference today, a lot of dead cap. A lot of money that's just effectively being wasted right now. I hate the idea of taking money back if it's beyond this year, because it just becomes it is a nonstop cycle of bad. And it's the kind of move that if you were really committed to being a bottom feeder for 2 years, then it doesn't matter. If Ottawa demands it, if that really is part of it, say it's a Lawton and it's 12 and you have to take back a bad deal. If the idea is eventually, hey, stepping stone to get to 4, is there a deal to just be made directly with Columbus?
No.
That says, here you go, guys. They won't go back far enough.
They won't go 4 to 12. Yeah, no. They're too bad of a team. Ottawa looks at themselves and says,
what if it's an extra pick? What if instead of...
No, I don't think so.
Really?
No. I mean, the only way I would think that they would think about it, you're talking about maybe giving up your first round pick next year.
Which would
because
be
the Flyers aren't going to be right.
Yeah,
They're not, and you can't do that. You can't give that up if you're a bad team, right? So that's the only way I would think would happen. I think 4 to 12 is too big of a drop for a bad team. Ottawa looks at themselves as a team that should have been better than they were last year. They had, going into last season, they had a real belief that they were a playoff team, and then they weren't.
It's weird. It's like there's a guy on the team who I
think that you guys just really are so on, you make too much out of one player. You really do. But whatever.
Not a winning player.
Okay.
Not a winning guy. Doesn't matter where he goes. Florida, I'll tell you what, Florida really looks like they miss him.
No. Okay. He didn't sign in Florida.
He was a lovely player.
Yeah.
Lovely player. Not a winning player. Will not win a cup. Will finish his career having a bunch of those kind of shitty sort of seasons where it's like, we think we have a chance. We think we can make the playoffs. That ain't a winning player move. Going home is always a beautiful thing. And it's a beautiful story if you're an elite player and you can actually finish off the being able to go home and win it. And I get that in hockey, it's very different than basketball. If you are the best of the best, if you're LeBron and you go back to Cleveland and you can win a title where you can be more impactful as a single player in basketball than in hockey, it's a great story. When you're playing hockey and you do the I'm going to go home thing, That's great, but you have effectively said the rest of my career, I will not compete for a Stanley Cup. But that's neither here nor there. Ottawa is a weird team. They're going to continue to tell themselves that they have a chance to make the playoffs, and whatever that means to them is whatever.
So anyway, point being, Columbus won't make that big of a drop because they don't fancy themselves as a team that's ready to make the playoffs next year.
Is there another team that you could see looking to move out of the top 10? Or like the top 8? I'm just trying to figure out, like, the one thing that I think we've seen historically is when all of the chatter is around one team and one move, it very rarely comes to fruition. Like, if the trade had been executed, fine. But now there being so many rumors around the Flyers trying to trade up to Ottawa, and then what do they do from there? Like, are we missing somebody? Are we missing a team that might be top 8 and says, you know what? Screw it. Like, we're happy to move back a few spots because we believe that players 6 through 15 are about the same level, and we could pick up an extra pick in the process.
Maybe Utah at 6.
Okay.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know what their thought. I mean, you got to remember that's a team that has a lot of decent young talent too. Mm-hmm. And but it's more offensive talent. And so maybe they look at it and say, yeah, if we get something else out of it, we can add a couple of defensemen. Like there's other defensemen in this draft beyond the top 10.
Yeah.
They're just probably not number 1 caliber defensemen, right? Like there's that kid, Czech defenseman, Adam Jiricek, who people like. I mean, first round, he's going to be a first round defenseman. All right. He's going to be decent, solid. But nobody thinks that he's a number 1 guy. But maybe if you're Utah, you look at it and say, if we get 12 and something else out of it, maybe we could do that. Maybe we can go that route. So, who knows? That's a possibility. I don't think anybody in the top 3 are moving. I don't see Montreal moving.
At 5. They
don't move. Seattle, no.
Seattle at 8?
No. Calgary at 9, maybe.
Calgary's not going to move. Calgary's going to wait to see if Iginla's there. Wouldn't that be the story? Wouldn't that be quite the story, though?
It'd be a great story, but I talked to a scout who says, I don't understand why everybody is so high on Iginla all of a sudden. He doesn't think he's as good as...
Really?
Yeah. It's one scout. Again, it's one scout with an opinion, and a lot of people have opinions. But this is an amateur scout, right? Who watches these guys play. I'm not giving you an opinion. I don't watch the guy play, right? So I can't tell you if I think he's going to be any good or not. But
hey, Tony Louie just checked in. We have another super chat we have to get to here in a second. But Tony Louie with an absolutely off the wall. All right, hold on.
Yeah.
What are the chances it's Konechny for the 7th pick?
Nope.
No other picks included. Travis Konechny to Ottawa reunites with Claude Giroux.
No. That's
30-goal scorer.
No.
Right there.
Not happening.
Because Ottawa wouldn't want that for 7, or because the Flyers wouldn't trade Konechny for 7? Who says no? Do they both say no?
Here's the thing. Konechny's due a new contract.
Mm-hmm.
Ottawa's not in a great financial spot, right? Are they suddenly going to be able to say, all right, well, we'll take 1 year of Travis Konechny, and then he becomes a free agent, and we're going to give up the seventh overall pick in the draft, right? Yeah. So it's not going to happen. So
okay. There was a good question here, by the way. Robert Thomas tried to send us. Yeah, that's where I'm getting to. Robert Thomas tried to send us 2 super chats. Tried to send the first one, I think, prematurely sent it, but here it is. And I guess Robert Thomas is Get Pucks Deep over on X.
Oh,
says, will they get some clarity on Mishkov before the draft?
That's a great question. I wish I had the answer for you.
In theory, it is before the end of June, which is what the SKA St. Petersburg president said.
But the draft is before the end of June.
No, I'm saying like clarity by the end of June is what he said, and the draft is a few days before the end of June. Just saying, could it be?
No, but what I'm saying is that it could be that the draft happens and then before the clarity.
Yeah.
I think that the way Danny answered it today was probably the best way. Like, hey, we don't know what they're doing over there. they have one person on the ground. Well, no, wait, you roll your eyes a little bit, right? I'm not just going to sit here and say that they're completely in the dark, because they're not completely in the dark, but they only have one person with boots on the ground in Russia. And they have contact with the Russian agent. Now, the Russian agent certainly would want to get his player over here because he's going to make money, right, out on the deal. So I think that there's communication there, but there's no communication, zero communication with SKA. There's zero communication with the KHL. They don't know how the geopolitical stuff is being handled in Russia. And I think that when Danny says, and I think this part is true, that when he says, if we find out that he can come over and be here, we'll be more than happy to bring him. Mm-hmm. But we're still looking at it. And the one thing he said today that I thought was really interesting about it was, look at a kid like Oliver. He did a comparison of Oliver Bonk, and he said, look at Oliver Bonk. He was drafted in the same draft.
Yep.
Played 1 year junior. Probably going to play a second year junior. Then he's probably going to play a year, at least 1 year at the AHL, if not two. He says there's a real chance both him and Mishkov arrive at the same time. And that's part of their plan. Like, they're expecting that. Yeah. So if Mishkov comes sooner, obviously it's a bonus, but that they're not expecting it, right? So I think that they'll take it and they'll be happy with it, but I don't think it's an expectation. If you want my honest opinion, when I think, and this is
like, come
not,
on, Danny, come on, Danny.
This is not by any. I don't say this with any confidence. So there's zero confidence behind the statement I'm about to make. But if I had to predict when Mishkov gets over here, it's in March.
Mm. Well, hopefully, if he decides he wants to come over here, they don't make him march to the gulag like they did with Fedotov. Allegedly. Okay. Like,
Zach, Zach.
What?
Wait, you got to put up Zach's comment.
Yo, what you don't see right now is I was joking around. I don't know if I
saw it earlier today when you had the shirt unbuttoned. You were all Nick Castellanos on us.
I know that our feeds are probably very different in like what is served to us on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. But like, I started getting these videos on Instagram, and it was like this guy who like shows millennial versus Gen Z. And it's like, what would they do to style this differently? And I have to tell you, I was so shocked at like the stylistic difference. And like, I used to teach Gen Z, right? So like, but like what they're apparently developing into is horrific. And so as a joke, like I usually go, you don't do the top button. That's horrible, right? I usually go to the first button, which is the millennial thing to do. But Gen Z goes one more, which is kind of what Nick Castellanos does. So I've been walking around the house with that. But then as a joke, I went one more button down. So I was almost like, remember the J-Lo dress where it kind of cut right above the belly button?
Yeah.
So I was walking around the house like that. My kids didn't even like bat an eye. They were just like, it doesn't matter. Like, guy does anything. But here's the thing. I don't consider myself to be an attractive fellow. My wife seems to. She also is the one who tells me to do the mustache. She likes the shirt. She likes the mustache. Happy wife, happy life. Also, it is a vibe. And it is the summer. We are in the midst, though, Ant. You're growing your hair out for the wedding. And I'm figuring out if I'm going to grow the hair out for the wedding, too. It's been a decade since I had long hair. And I'm very tempted to grow it out.
Should I ask Maria if she wants you to have long hair as our officiant?
Should I pull up a picture for her of what it used to look like?
You can.
All right, I'll find one in the meantime. Yeah, go ahead. Is she right there?
Oh, she's right here. She's right behind the computer.
All right, so I want you to ask Maria.
Yeah.
What her opinion is. Now, she's going to have to see the picture when I have it, though, because...
Yeah, well, when you have it, you pull it up on the screen, and I'll have her...
I look a little bit different now than I did, years and years ago.
Yeah.
I used to show this picture to...
By the way, did you see this comment?
No, what? You guys don't look near as good as you do when I'm on. It says, Bundy, Bundissimo. Bundy, we need to know, are you being honored tonight? Is there another award coming your way? We need to know. The people need to know.
And if you're free for 5 minutes, feel free to hop on.
He should hop on. Yeah. Do you remember the one time it was the Madonna toilet story when he was in the comments Then he popped on the show real quick. Oh, I gotta go show you the shitter Madonna was.
Yeah. He took us to the Madonna toilet. That was right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'm in the process of pulling up this picture. It is horrific though. Like when I tell you that it's a not great image.
It doesn't have to be high def or anything like that.
No, I don't mean that it's high def. I'm just like, there's a middle part, and I don't know if I'm comfortable with everybody seeing the middle part.
Oh, what's it, like a half shirt? Are you?
No, a middle part, the part in the hair.
Oh,
when
middle.
When you had a lot of hair,
I had a part down the middle.
How did you wear it?
I had a part down the middle when I was 13, 14, somewhere in that range.
Okay.
Yeah. That was a style.
You did have one though. Okay.
Yeah, but that was a style.
All right. Well, here we go. I think
you got it.
Yeah, I just have to make sure that I share it. I'm not going to share anybody else's image.
Hunter, are you on the feed right now, or do you have to come over here and look at it? She's like sitting there scrolling on her phone, so I have no idea if she's actually listening to us or.
We were on a roll today, by the way. All right, so here we go, Ant.
Here comes the picture.
Is this what you want to be officiating your wedding?
You got to come look at the photo.
Is that what you want officiating your wedding?
Oh my Lord! Look at this picture. I cannot believe that that's Russ.
I mean,
Get the hell out of here.
Little middle part.
Get the hell out of here.
I can cover up the 5 head. As you can see, the 5 head's always been there.
It's in Westchester. It's his photo from Westchester University.
That's right. There's a saxophone in my hand. You can't see. Yeah. Hold on, let me.
Yeah, there's
scroll down. There you go, a little saxophone. Yeah, that's how you get the ladies. You know.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So
yeah, I think the people behind you were talking about your hair right now.
I think they thought it was majestic, and it was some luscious locks flowing, Ant. So anyway, there you go.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about it. I'm like, you know what?
Bundy, by the way, Bundy just texted, said, send him a link and he'll come on in a couple of minutes when he's in the car.
That's what we like.
Yeah. So you got to send him the link.
You got to send him the link.
You got to do it through Twitter, Russ.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I do love some of the things that Matt Bennick's saying. Got the dog in me. So anyway.
Yeah.
Jerry Martin, I saw, tried to send over a super chat. So Jerry, you don't have to send another one. You can just leave a comment and we'll do it below. But Scott thinks Kurt Russell. Looks like Kurt Russell there. Blades of Steel I'm seeing. So there you go.
Kenny G's little brother. That's my favorite comment.
Well, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
From Danky Bud.
Oh, yo, Eric H., you could tell, was a Westchester guy. Used to sit on the roof of the Rat and play his sax until sunrise. So the Rat was a bar, but it preceded my time at Westchester. It was across the street from Main Hall. It's where Burrito Loco is or was. I don't know if Belo's still open or anymore, but there used to be a bar over there, like right across from campus, called the Rat.
Yeah.
There you go. A little bit. There you go. Bundy down there. Oh, it's one time at band camp. Ah.
Oh, that's great.
All right. Hey, there was another comment, and I just saw Luther bring it up, and somebody else had brought it up before too. What did Danny say about offering Hart a contract? To be clear, the question was about a number of players, but then Carter Hart's name was brought up in terms of a qualifying offer. Danny said, "We haven't heard from the league what to do." There was a rebuttal from the reporter who I don't remember who it was, but they said the league had previously said that they're going to be free agents, whatever. And Danny said, we are still waiting on actual guidance from the league. There is potential about could they retain his rights? Does it kind of sit in limbo, I guess? Does it kind of sit in purgatory for a while until the decision is made?
I think it was a friend of the program, Jackie Spiegel, who asked that question, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, I mean, I think what Danny really means by guidance from the league is what exactly the parameters would be if they offered to qualify him, right? Like what would, would they get the cap relief? Would they, does he count against their 50 contracts? Where does a player like that fit? Are there special rules for these players in case they're found not guilty and then can come back and play? Or are they going to get a compensation of some sort, on a player if you offer the contract and then they're found guilty, right? Like there's a lot of different things. And as per usual, the league drags its feet and doesn't provide answers. And so they have to kind of think about it, and wait till the league tells them what's what, and then make a determination off of that. I don't think it, I think some people kind of thought that when Danny said they were waiting for guidance from the league, they were waiting for the league to tell them what to do. And that's not it at all. It's just to see where things would stand if they were to offer provide a qualifying offer. I stand by my opinion, and it is just an opinion. It's not something that was told to me.
Yeah.
But knowing this organization and how they operate, I can't imagine that they offer him the qualifying offer. I would be surprised.
I don't think they could possibly do it now. I think it does become an actual conversation if the league says you're going to retain his rights until there's an actual resolution.
Or so, in other words,
because when you get far enough down the line, and I think everybody knows where we stand on this matter, and if you don't, go back in the archives.
Yeah.
Like we've been very, very adamant about our standing on the legal situation and justice for the victim and everything. There is the possibility that he is cleared legally, and then at that point you say, you might bring him back, or you might say, hey, this is such a toxic situation, you don't want anything to do with it, and you potentially move him for an asset. Is there a team that gets desperate?
Yeah, no. The one thing I think could happen is the league could punt it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, say, yeah, you're retaining them, you have the right to retain them, but we'll port the qualifying offer forward from one season to the next until this is resolved. I think that's a possibility, but I don't know. I mean, the league does need to kind of tell them, and the league hasn't said anything. So we have somebody waiting to come on the show.
I see. And you know what? I'm so happy to see his face the way that it is. He didn't get rid of that beard.
Look at that. The beard is still going.
Stud. Look at him. He's got to keep that to the wedding. I said it has to be a Ryan Ellis beard. Bundy is here. Give it up.
Good evening, guys. Good to, I saw it on the thing. I had to go to a recovery anniversary, and we were, of all places, at the Saloon in Philadelphia. And so I just got out, and I saw you, my two buddies on here. I said, I can't help myself tonight. Of course, you're talking about the draft stuff, and I know that I don't really get too much involved in it. But I did tell you guys a couple weeks ago, I'm still like that Cole Iserman in this year's draft, and I do remember him from the rinks. So we'll see what happens. But I'm going to watch the beginning of what you guys had earlier. But anything cooking, anything on the hot seat right now, Ant?
No, and I mean nothing more than we've already discussed on this program about, I kind of took everybody through the process. I wrote a story today on Crossing Broad that kind of took everybody through the formulation of the Ottawa rumor and what that could mean, and that what there could potentially be beyond that if everything falls exactly into place for the Flyers. But no, there's nothing that's kind of new. But I will say that and I'll repeat this for anybody who joined late, I do think, Bundy, that they will pick somewhere other than 12, whether it's higher up, or even if they can't move up to get a player that they want, potentially move back and accrue other assets. I do not think they will pick at 12. I think that'll be a surprise if they do.
Yeah, that's a fair point, Anthony, and I can understand that. Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. There's a lot of things. I mean, trades are happening now during the final with, Devils and the Calgary move. And I'm sure I'm repeating a lot of stuff you've talked about, but
we didn't even get into
we didn't talk about the final. So this actually is a good time for it. Like, you guys were a lot more bullish about Edmonton just in general than I was. I truthfully didn't think they were going to make the final. I definitely had written them off after the first 3 games, as a lot of people had. But now all of a sudden they win the last 2 games. It's going back to Edmonton. Obviously, there is the possibility of a letdown game after you're riding so much emotion. But Bundy, like as a player, when you face an old 3-hole or you face a significant deficit and you now kind of put the other team on their back foot, like where's your head at going into Game 6? Is more of the pressure on Edmonton, or is the pressure truly on Florida to avoid going back, even though it's at home, to going back to Game 7?
Yeah, I don't think there's any way around it if you're Florida. I mean, so you have a problem here now and watching the finals. And last game was intriguing in both of the games. And I was thinking to myself when it was 3-0, only because I tell the story about the game 5 and we should have beaten the Devils and we didn't. We laid an egg in 2000. And I remember before the game telling guys like, you know what, guys, we need to finish this. Like, this is the most important game of the playoffs. And we didn't. They came back in. You know, a lot of things happened after that. But if you're Florida, I can't think of how your asshole isn't tighter than the frog's rear end, too. Like, I mean, that's what I'm thinking in this whole situation, because Florida has had the lead 3-0. Now they lost the game. Well, what you've done in the process is you've given Edmonton the weapon that they want the most, and that is free falling offense. You know, now you've got McDavid, who's got 8 points in 2 games. How are you going to keep that guy off the board 2 or 3 times back home in Edmonton? I'll tell you what. I mean, listen, I'll tell you what I think. I think Florida either wins. I think they're going to have to win tomorrow night in Edmonton, because I think the pressure of a game 7 is just absolutely insurmountable for the home team. And I think that's a game where McDavid could just go totally fucking off. And it could be like a beating like Florida took last year in the last game against Vegas. You know, we've seen that. They've had a propensity for giving up a lot of goals in big games. If you eliminate the 3-0 lead, you can make a case right now that the series could easily be 3-2 Edmonton, because I thought Edmonton played better in game 1. But, you know, again, I don't know. Florida's not connected right now. They're disjointed with some players. Yet they go through periods and points of hockey games where they totally dominate. But they haven't been able to finish. But there's really no answer, guys, that you can put forth for somebody who's, got 4 points in each of the last 2 games. I mean, that's just ridiculous. You know, I mean, that is.
I had to try to find a break there, but there was a Bundy bomb.
Yeah, there's no. Yeah, you don't get a breather. Like, you get no breather with those guys. You know, with McDavid. So, I mean, I don't know how that's the question. I don't know how they shut them down. I'll leave on this one just about the playoffs. Florida is not good enough to defend him with 2 defensemen. And what they need to do a better job of is activating that center, which is supposed to be Barkov, and it probably won't be tomorrow night because of the last change. But that's one thing there that Florida has to start understanding. When they do a job on him and really use their defensive center, it's better. When they go 2 defensemen and the 2D are backed in, it's game over and lights out. And so they're going to have to make that adjustment, because right now McDavid looks like he's playing a game of shinny hockey and doing whatever he wants.
Bundy, Dominic Servo over on YouTube asks, can you tell us how Hitchcock would sound giving a Game 6 inspirational speech?
So if it was Hitch that was on the team that came back from he got the 2 wins. Right now he's down 3-2. He'd say, guys, I need everybody here to understand I've brought you back this far. Now I'm going to try to do it again tonight, but I'm gonna need a couple of you to jump on my back with me and help me.
So there a lot of room.
And don't you worry. Don't. I got plenty of room on this back. Oh, for sure. I could put a whole team on the back of me. All right. It's unscripted. This is not a comedy show. I just wanted to check in on you guys.
Get it back.
You know what? Yeah, that would be actually. You know what, guys? It's kind of funny. We may as well say it in the world we live in. I mean, there's a lot of coaches that would probably think that they were the one reason for the coming back from an 0-3. You know, and it's hard to find the guy to do it. But you know what? It's pretty obvious why Edmonton's back in it. It's number 97, and their offense is picked up. It's gonna be an interesting game tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to it. I really am. I'm gonna check out, guys. I got a puppy. I got to get back to it.
All right, Bundy.
Thanks, Bundy. See you guys in the next show for sure. Thanks, guys. Good seeing you guys.
All right, so there he is, the man on the road. Good old Bundy.
By the way, speaking of old number 97, Connor McDavid, the Snow the Goalie fantasy team has made it up to 4th place in the standings. I don't think we can get any higher.
We said there was a chance that we would get into the top 4 with a strong McDavid showing.
Yeah, and we're going to get there. We're there now, and I don't think we're falling out. The thing of it is that I don't think that there's any way in hell, even with 2 games, if they played 2 more games, that we could catch anybody else. So I think 4th place is where we're going to finish out of 19, which is pretty good. Not bad.
Yeah, I'm trying to see right now. All right, we're at 184 points. Yeah, we're definitely not getting to the top.
Yeah, the top team.
It is interesting though. Like McDavid, I mean, obviously we knew this would happen, but like McDavid having such a strong showing here in the final has really propelled him up the leaderboard.
He's second behind Bouchard. Yeah.
I wanted to get to a comment here though, and like I know that McDavid gets the flowers here, but Andrew Fawcett checks in with a super chat. Thank you, Andrew. Skinner is 9-0 with a .938 save percentage in between games 4 to 7 in this playoffs. We always talk about the fact that like if a goalie gets hot, we went into the playoffs saying, hey, Edmonton in net could really be an adventure. If he's able to maintain anywhere near that kind of efficiency, they have a legitimate shot to force a game 7. Have to.
I mean, of course, at this point, they have a shot to force it. I still think, and one thing I didn't get a chance to say to Bundy, and I would love to get his response to it, the Oilers, even in game 5 there, like even when they were up 4-1, I'm thinking to myself, Florida's still going to win this game. Mm-hmm. I just thought Florida was playing a better brand of hockey overall. Yes, McDavid was great, and they got 2 power play goals, and they got a shorthanded goal, right? So special teams, the advantage goes back to Edmonton. As long as Florida stays out of the box, though, I think that they're the better team. 5-on-5, they dominate the game. And so, like, I can't think that you're going to have 4 consecutive games where a team dominates at 5-on-5 and loses. I don't know. I mean, Rob, I know that's a good point, but you got to remember those 16 games in a row were not against the same team, right? I mean, it's hard to beat the same team 4 games in a row. And again, 5-on-5 this entire series, even in, maybe game 4 was maybe the one game, Edmonton was the better team, but even game 5, I mean, it was Florida was the better team at even strength, just were. And I can't think that Edmonton's going to win 2 more games playing like that. I just can't.
Anything can happen. It's the beauty of playoff hockey. Legitimately, anything can happen. I will just say very selfishly on like what I do for a living, it would be great to see a game 7. I do think that it's a missed opportunity though. And I think you would probably agree. So the way that the NBA playoffs were supposed to go, game 7 of the finals would have been Sunday. Everybody loves a good Sunday game. I think this sucks that game 6 of this series takes place on a Friday, but game 7 wouldn't take place until Monday. I don't like big Monday games. I don't like when college football has the Monday championship game.
Can I say,
I genuinely don't like it.
Well, can I say this? It hasn't, to me, the day of the week at this point is irrelevant. Just get the freaking thing over. Like this has been forever. It's been interminable because they take off 2 days between each travel because it's such a far trip. And it's like, my God, this thing is taking forever. I really would lose my mind if it goes to a game 7. Be like, oh, here we go again. And not only that, now you've got
been over 2 months since the Flyers played their last game.
Yes,
and I get it. The Flyers like fell apart down the stretch. 2 months, and since we did a press row show.
Yeah,
2 months, and they're still playing hockey.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, if it goes to game 7, to have the final in the same week as the draft is insanity. I mean, there are teams making trades for next season while this season is still going on. Like, it shouldn't be allowed. I mean, no other sport has that. Like, while their season is still going on, that they make trades for the next year. Like, that shouldn't happen.
And by the way, our Hextall 87, I know was joking, like you jinxed a quadruple OT game in game 7. I'm going to throw this out. When we come back to the idea of, hey, game 7, if it happens, won't happen on a Saturday or a Sunday. I understand why the league wants to do prime time. I get it. I get that during the week, it has to happen. But can you imagine how good it would be for the game if Game 7, hypothetical Game 7, had happened on a Saturday or Sunday, and they said, we're going to start the game at 5 o'clock Eastern, or 6 o'clock even Eastern, where it allows for the West Coast to still be in a good enough time frame to watch it. The East Coast, obviously, it's not starting too late. It allows that if the game does go to OT, you're making it available to more people, and most importantly, to younger fans. Like, hockey families are going to let their kids stay up no matter what, right?
But the
idea
this.
of like having a game go until 11, 11:30, God forbid, if it goes to OT, double OT, and the game doesn't actually end until the next day till like 12:30, 12:40, that's not good for the league. No. It's like nobody can tell me that it is.
Well, here's they don't care about the fan. Let's be honest. I mean, it's all about the advertising dollars, and the advertising dollars are better in prime time than they are at any other time of the day. I will say that it was likely that it would have ended on Game 7 would have been on a Saturday if it wasn't these two teams, because there would only be the one day in between travel.
Yeah,
just because of how far the travel is, they extended it out. Because that's a nightmare trip, because you can't, there's no direct flights, right? I mean, it's not just the teams. Yeah, they're chartering. Okay, fine. But all the people from the league and the media and everybody else, the TV people and everything, they're not on charters. They're flying commercial. And so they got to go. I think that there's one of two different ways or three different ways, but either all of them have a layover in another city. And then you got to go to so I think it's if you're flying from Fort Lauderdale, Miami, or Fort Lauderdale, you're flying to either Kansas City, Minneapolis, or Toronto, and then over to Edmonton. It's a pain in the ass. I mean, your trip you're talking about making it a 9-hour flight, and that's assuming your planes leave on time.
Yeah,
that's a lot. And then say, okay, and then the next day after that, then you're working. Yeah, it's tough. They kind of had to do it, but it's bad. It's a shame. I wonder if they now, once they realize what this schedule was going to be, if they maybe start a week later next year than they probably would have.
Maybe like the week of the 22nd, I think.
Not that late. Maybe like the 15th.
Wasn't this year the 15th?
This year was the 11th, I think it was.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, I think it was the 11th. Maybe like the 15th.
Yeah. I think they need to we talked about this before. We'll probably talk about this again this offseason. They need to create enough of a gap with the NBA. I totally get that there's not a ton of crossover, or at least there's not a lot of perceived crossover between the NBA fan base and the NHL fan base. But when it comes to the playoffs and to like potentially growing your sport, there needs to be something split. Like there needs to be a designated time that like the NBA is done, the NHL is the only show in town.
Yeah.
And if that means that you have to start later because hockey's played on ice, we can make the pitch that like you start the season closer to when it gets cold out. If that's what you go for, like whatever it is, I don't care. But I do think that they need to set that up. And now you can go to Mike's comment there, which is very true. I'll find the side by side.
So funny. That side by side photo is hysterical. Absolutely hysterical. Same network, two different sports in the final, and what they did. That was absolutely a riot. Yeah, I mean, look, I remember back when I was young, Russ. So I don't know if you remember this, but when I was younger, the NHL started the first week of October, and the NBA didn't start till the first week of November. So you didn't have this crossover where the finals were going on at the same time. Like, that's a new thing. That's a relatively new thing in recent years. I mean, hell, go back even further. I know there was one less round, but the Flyers won the Stanley Cup in the 70s on May 19th, right? So you're talking, not just, yes, there was one fewer round, but you're talking a full 5 weeks before this one. So what's the difference? It's when you're starting the season, right? I mean, in the playoffs the regular season used to end like the beginning of April. This year it went till mid-April. I don't know why all of a sudden they're spreading it out so much. Maybe it has to do with travel and the union, and the players need this time off, and you can't have, they built in the bye weeks for the teams now, so it extends it. Okay, fine, whatever. But yeah, they got to figure out a way to kind of change it up, because I think right now this isn't good. Maybe you move the draft to a little bit later. Maybe it's not July 1st that's free agency. Maybe it's July 15th instead is when free agency starts. I know the fiscal year begins July 1st. Okay, fine. But it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
I wanted to get your opinion here from Joe Fisher. Says ESPN doesn't care about NHL, and some of the channel show hosts bash the sport. We talked about when the TV deals were coming up last year about how moving to TNT and moving to ESPN might help grow the game a little bit. There was a lot of skepticism about the announcing crews and about how much the ESPNs of the world would actually lean into it. Do you think it's helped grow the game at all? Like, do you think it's helped to increase the profile that the NHL is being talked about on Scott Van Pelt's Late Night Sports Center show? Like, do you see anything there? Like, where do you land?
I don't think ESPN cares, frankly. I think they care about the fact that they can say they have hockey. I really think that it's just like, oh yeah, well, we have all the sports now. We have everything. We have hockey too. But I don't think that they care enough. They used to care. I mean, back in the day, ESPN used to have NHL Tonight. They used to have good hockey conversation. Like, there was a market for it. Yeah. And then it just went away. And now that they're back, their coverage is just not good. I think TNT does a much better job, a much better job of covering the sport. And I don't know why ESPN kind of just meanders it through. And yeah, Andrew Fawcett says it, and he's 100% right. And this is no lie. The WNBA gets better coverage on ESPN than the NHL.
Well, it's also,
and I get
the WNBA is effectively funded by the NBA, and there's that synergetic relationship between the two.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get it. Look, Caitlin Clark is carrying, women's basketball right now. It's really kind of blown up the popularity of it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's fantastic, and it's good. But I agree that you're missing an opportunity. I mean, I look at it this way, Russ, right? And this is what the argument we've made for years here in Philadelphia, let alone nationally. One of the reasons why we have a successful podcast is because there is an audience that is craving talking about hockey. Yeah. And no other local outlet dedicates time to the hockey team. So, I mean, yes, there are other podcasts in hockey podcasts in Philadelphia, and people listen to them, and they're fine, they're good, and that's all well and good. Mm-hmm. But the reality of it is that people are seeking us out for this stuff because it's not on your traditional platforms. Mm-hmm. And they're missing that boat. Mm-hmm. And I think when you look at it from a national perspective too, just because it's the fourth sport doesn't mean you just kind of you get through it, right? If you dedicated something to it and made it something like appointment television to watch, hockey fans would tune in. There's no question in my mind that they would. So to completely dismiss it is it's asinine.
Well, I mean, I've talked about this on Crossing Broadcast on Mondays, but I did last Monday. I think I did this past Monday. I did one of my long, you know how I am, where I go off on radio and local media. Yeah. WIP has no incentive to talk about the Flyers. None. They have no incentive to do anything different because they continue to win the ratings books. And even though I think that like the Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni thing that's now on like day 12 or whatever, where people are still talking about it, which I think was a mostly nothing burger of a comment, I get why they do what they do. They continue to win. But I look at the thing I always come back to is 97.5. I never understand. I've never understood how you continue to lose in the ratings, and yet you're trying to do the same thing, and that there is no differentiation. They're truly, for the most part, for years now, they have been trying to run the same playbook as WIP and not be as good at it. And I know that they have a new program director over there. That's the third one, I think, in like 4 years that they've had. And like, wish him the best. And I hope that for the sake of that station, that like they pull the nose up on it and they try something different.
I mean, it's a legitimate program director. I mean, you know his background, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he created a lot of the stuff on ESPN, Scott Masteller. So I mean, it's not like this is just some radio lifer who's wandering around. You know, this is a guy who built, you know, one of the best groups of people up at ESPN. I don't think that he's going to ultimately be successful in chipping away at WIP. I just think that's a behemoth that they're never going to surpass. They had their chance and missed it, and that ship has sailed. But I do think he has the possibility of making it a little bit better than what it's been, for sure.
Yeah, you get Missinelli in there for the middays. You get a little bit creative in the afternoons. You never know. You never know what'll happen. I mean, I saw Kincaid wrote a thing today, or Pagan did, on Crossing Broad about Missinelli confirming that there was an offer made. If you're Mike Missinelli, you have no incentive to go into the studio right now. There is none. None. I've talked to a few people who seem to be of the opinion that Missinelli is going to wait until football season and then take that job. Yeah. It's waiting there for him. And if he goes to middays, it's interesting. I know that you and I view things differently. I actually enjoy and find entertainment in Joe Giglio and Hugh Douglas's show. But if you tell me that they're going to then be pushed at the same time by Missinelli on the other station, all of a sudden, that's the most intriguing time slot. I don't like either morning show in the least bit. I have no interest. I don't think that the people are not talented. I just don't enjoy either morning show. If the middays get very interesting, then all of a sudden, could there be an effect? If you're 97.5, you have a better midday show. Does that help to grow the afternoon show?
And so
I still think ultimately the unlikability factor in the afternoon on 97.5 is so high that it won't matter if they're going to keep the same cast and crew. But these are radio conversations that we have over on other shows, and not necessarily this one. But
I think you're right. I think if there is a path, if there is an Achilles heel to WIP, it starts at the midday. You start there and you chip away. But I don't think that you have enough, even with bringing Missinelli back. I don't think there's enough to overcome.
I said this on the Monday show, Ant. It's always funny for me to go back and think about 5 years ago or 7 years ago, whatever it was, when we took this show, Crossing Broadcast, crossed up to 610 ESPN. We were getting callers. We were actually getting interaction on an AM station
that nobody knew existed
because people wanted to engage with us.
Yeah.
And we said, hey, you give a flyer show an hour on 97.5 on the weekend. It's a very simple thing. It's not going to cost you a ton. I mean, we want to get paid. But it's not a very complicated thing, and people will go out of their way to interact with that show because they're going to care. And by the way, if your weekends aren't particularly doing well, which we've now heard from quite a few people, it certainly can't hurt. I don't know, man. I don't think it's that complicated. I genuinely don't. Mike call. I still enjoy doing this podcast. I still enjoy interacting with all these wonderful people in the comments. There was a point that I wanted to make, though, before we got off on this radio thing. And it was just about the growth of the game and about TV ratings this year. And I do think that while ESPN's coverage has been very, very underwhelming in a lot of ways, going into the playoffs, NHL ratings were at an 8-year high. And they were going through record attendance. So I'm looking at a story from Sportico that says Nielsen Live Plus same-day data. The regular season this year averaged just over 500,000 viewers per game, which is 8% above last year over year. That's important. ESPN was the one that really pushed that average up. They averaged 486,000 viewers per game, which was a 25% boost over last year. So whether people enjoyed the coverage or not, I think that there still is something to be said for ESPN acknowledging the existence of the league helps. And then you go to the playoffs, the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs across all networks. So the ESPNs, the ABCs, the TNTs, TBS, True TV, the live simulcasting that they did through HBO Max and ESPN Plus, 934,000 viewers on average watched the first round. That's the second most watched first round in the history of the National Hockey League. So again, while we might be critical and think that, hey, the coverage isn't great, it definitely, NBC Sports Network, the national entity, wasn't as available in as many homes. It was a little bit iffy. I think that from a league perspective, this was a win. And listen, man, if they get to a point where the Stanley Cup Final goes to a Game 7, best player in the league is leading his team into a potential comeback from an 0-3 hole, I don't know, man. The numbers could be pretty damn good.
We'll see. It's Edmonton and it's Florida. I can't imagine that the numbers are good at all. I don't care who's in it. They're good in Canada. I don't think they're good here. That's all.
I'll have to see if I can find anything, Ant.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'll see if. Yeah. I have not seen anything about the Stanley Cup Final yet. I'm going to give you an over/under, and you're gonna guess because this is the last number. Don't you dare look for the graphic.
What graphic?
Game 7 of Toronto versus Boston. How many viewers did it have in North America? I'm going to set the over/under at 8.2 million.
It's Toronto in North America. So you're talking
North
Canada
America,
too.
So it's Canada and the U.S.
It's over.
8.8 million people watched Game 7 of Toronto-Boston.
How many of them were in Canada?
I don't know. If it goes, hold on.
Probably 6 million were in Canada.
That, by the way, was the second highest rated, second highest total viewership in North America for a game outside of the Stanley Cup Final. Second highest ever. So I love the question here, by the way. R. Hextall asking, how many in Mexico? No say. No say. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting.
Just so you know, I looked up last year's Stanley Cup Final ratings, which was also Florida and Vegas. So it was another American team, okay? Brand like a newer market, popular market. Their best game was Game 1 at 2.75 million people. It was their best game. I guarantee you this series doesn't get over that.
Doesn't get over what?
2.75 in a game. Maybe.
It already happened.
Did they get over 2.75?
Yep. The Oilers win against the Panthers. Their 5-3 win.
In the U.S.
Had 4.1 million viewers on ABC.
Oh, that's because it was on ABC. That's why. Because last year was just TNT. That's true. But I didn't even think about that. Okay,
that's the beauty.
Fair.
That is the beauty. Of
2 years ago.
Network.
So 2 years ago, which was when it was on ABC. So I forgot about the fact that it was on TNT last year.
It is a little bit cheating. You're right.
Yeah, last year. So the last time it was on ABC was 2 years ago. Tampa Bay, Colorado. Okay, their biggest number was 5.8 million. 5.82 for Game 6 was their biggest number.
In fairness, when you have an 0-3 hole like these teams were in,
you'll see a little bit of a bump. You're not going
to pick up a lot of casual viewers. I'll be very interested to see what Friday's game is going to be.
No, because I think there are people who are checked out. I think people have checked out of the final because it's so long. I do. I really do.
I'm sorry. I will not be surprised. I'll make my prediction right now. They had 4.1 million for Game 5. They're going to pop like a 5.3 for tomorrow. And if that goes to a Game 7 on Monday with no NBA, with ESPN actually doing what it probably could do on Monday, which is talking about the fact that a team might be coming back from an 0-3 hole, best player in the league, don't be surprised if they go over 6 if it gets to a Game 7. These are my predictions. They don't call me They don't call me Rustradamus for nothing.
Yeah, don't see it.
But we'll see. We will see. Get your predictions in the comments section. Big thank you to everybody who.
Oh, by the way, you put a poll up. We should check on the poll before we get out of here.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I ended the poll a long time ago.
But you didn't say what it was. You didn't say the results of the poll.
You're right. Yeah,
I know.
It's way up there. I don't know if I can actually pull it or not.
You can't check and see the results of the poll that you scheduled.
Well, because what had happened was it looks like it only lets me go back so far in the live chat. I can't see it. I think it was 60% of people thought that they were going to move up, and it was like 35% thought that they were going to stand pat. Okay. And then there was very, very marginal numbers for the rest of it. So one thing I will say is that people need to hit that like button, whether you're watching live or you listen after the fact. We're at a very low number of likes, which is just very sad. Now the likes are going up on the video, so we're okay. Ant, I'm glad that we were able to make this happen. You requested this episode. Bundy got himself here.
Thanks, Michael, for going back and finding it. 66%.
I said 65. I said 60 or 65? Did I say 60? Yeah, 60. All right, so 66 said move up. A big thank you to everybody who joined us live on Facebook, X, YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. You can get the podcast wherever you get your podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, YouTube Music. Anywhere you get your podcasts, we are there. We will be back next week. It's going to look a little bit different. It'll sound a little bit different.
Who's the we? Are you going to be doing this?
I will be here. I'm going to take my microphone with me to the beach.
Wow.
I would not miss the draft.
Wow.
I know. I'm going to regret it. I'll probably regret it. But we'll do a draft show. I assume we'll probably do it after the first round, right? Like we're going to do it the same night. Probably.
We'll talk about that. Yeah, we'll talk about it.
If I'm taking my microphone to the beach,
it doesn't mean
on family vacation, we are doing a show that night. Maybe we go live after they pick at 4 and get Demidov, and then we say we'll be back later in the week or the weekend for when they, made their second pick in the first round.
We'll talk.
Rob South is right. Banger after banger after banger. See you guys on the next one. Thanks again to everybody. We will talk to all of you next week, unless they make a trade. If they do make a trade, we'll do an emergency pod. But otherwise, this is it for this week. Everybody have a fantastic rest of your day, your night, whenever you listen. We will talk to all of you very soon here on Snow The Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast.